My husband has an unhealthy attachment to his sister, almost like an obsession, often called a sister complex. Because of this, my sister-in-law and her husband have started treating our house like their own. They come over uninvited, go through my personal things, and use or take them without asking. My husband just ignores it, which only makes them act worse. I've had enough, and this is where my struggle begins, leading me to decide on divorce. My name is Jessica, and I'm 28 years old. I recently got a promotion at work, and while that might seem early to some, I'm proud of my efforts and happy with how my career is going. In my personal life, I'm a newlywed and was enjoying my life with my husband Tom. I felt things were going well. I was recognized at work and married the man I love. One day, I was assigned to go on my first business trip. I was a bit nervous but excited, especially since it was a result of my promotion. Before this, I'd been on a few work trips, usually just day trips, likely because I was newly married. But this time, I had to go away for 3 days. I told my husband about it, and he responded, "Oh, that's stuff for a newlywed, huh? I'll ask Sarah to come over." Sarah is Tom's younger sister. She's married too, but Tom still dotes on her in a way that makes me uncomfortable. "Why is Sarah coming over?" I asked. He said, "Well, it's hard for me to handle things alone, and Sarah is good at house chores. If she helps, we can manage while you're away. Don't worry about anything, and bring back some souvenirs." I wanted to tell him that he should be able to handle house chores too, but I didn't say anything. Personally, I didn't want Sarah in our home. She often showed up unannounced, acting like our house was hers, even though she's married and has her own place. It made things awkward for me, but it seems like she and Tom had been talking behind my back about her coming over. One day, Sarah and her husband showed up at our place without warning. I was hoping her husband would at least be a reasonable person, but I was wrong. He too lacked common sense, and both of them acted incredibly selfishly. "Hey, are you making dinner? I'm starving. And don't forget to get my shirt ready," Sarah's husband said. Things were even more complicated because Tom, my husband, didn't seem to like Sarah's husband. He apparently had some resentment toward him for marrying his beloved sister. On top of that, Sarah's husband had a gambling problem and spent most of his time at local casinos. Tom glared at him and said, "Why are you here? I didn't invite you." Her husband just shrugged it off and replied, "You're being cold, huh? Whatever, I'm just here for the free food." I watched them, frustrated, because they only thought about themselves. Tom kept grinning at Sarah, which drove me crazy. What made it worse was that Tom let Sarah come over whenever I wasn't home. I come back and find her lounging around, acting like it was her own place. She would say, "Hey Jessica, I'm hungry," as if this was normal. Sarah had no respect for my things either. She used my cosmetics without asking, and when they ran out, she'd say, "Hey sis, this one's empty. Buy me a new one, will ya?" I was furious. But when I tried to talk to Tom about it, he didn't understand. He just said, "She's happy to have a sister now and wants to share things with you. Don't you feel the same?" It was baffling. He didn't take my concerns seriously at all. Before I left for my business trip, I tried one more time to stop Sarah from coming over while I was gone. "Sarah, you're married too and probably have housework to do. Can't you manage without coming here for 3 days? I'll prepare meals ahead of time," I said. But Tom replied, "No, she's happy to come over. Her husband's always out gambling, and she's lonely. Are you jealous? We're just close siblings helping each other. Go on your trip and don't worry." Inside, I was screaming, "I'm not jealous. I just don't want Sarah in my house." But all I could say was, "Is that so?" And I left for my trip. I spent the entire trip anxious, worried about what would happen to my house and belongings. When I got back after 3 days, I found Sarah lounging around again. The house was a mess, and she hadn't restocked anything. "Welcome back. Thanks for your help with everything. You can go home now," I said, trying to be polite but firm. But Sarah replied, "What? I'm staying over tonight. We're having sushi for dinner." "What do you mean?" I asked, shocked. Sarah and I decided to order sushi, Tom said, sounding happy. I was stunned. We always decided together what to eat when I returned from trips, but Tom hadn't even contacted me while I was away. I tried to talk to Tom privately. "Hey, I just got back, and I'm really tired. I want to relax without having to deal with other people. You understand, right?" But he just brushed me off. "Don't worry, you two are like sisters," my husband Tom said casually, which only annoyed me more. Sarah, his sister, had stayed at our house for the entire 3 days I was away, but the house was a mess. I wondered what she had been doing all that time. When I went to my room, I noticed some of my cosmetics were missing and even some of my accessories were gone. My expensive new toner, which I had been using sparingly because it cost so much, was almost empty. I was furious. I'd also noticed that some of my favorite accessories had disappeared. I confronted Sarah, asking Sarah, "Did you use my stuff?" She casually replied, "Oh, sorry. It looked perfect on me, so I used it. But don't worry, I'll give it back." Her careless response made me even angrier, but when I realized she wouldn't take it seriously, I decided to talk to Tom again. "Come on, she's just borrowing it. You're too uptight. Why can't you trust my sister?" he said. Nothing I said seemed to make him understand how frustrated I was. Exhausted, I went to sleep feeling upset. 3 weeks later, I got another business trip offer, but this time it was for a week. When I told Tom, he seemed surprised. "A whole week? That's long. I'll just ask Sarah to take care of the house again, so you don't have to worry." I didn't want that at all, so I told him, "I don't want Sarah staying at our house anymore." Tom got angry. "Why not? She's family." "The last time you asked Sarah to help, nothing was cleaned when I got back," I replied. Tom looked away, clearly knowing I was right. I continued, "Sarah always takes my personal things without asking. She said she'll return them but never does." At that point, Tom finally seemed to give in. "All right, but I can't do the laundry for a whole week, so I'll just ask her to come over for one day and send her home after. Is that okay?" "Why don't you do the laundry?" I asked. "I've never done it before, I don't know how," he said. "I can teach you," I offered, but he refused. "No, I'll just have her come for one day," he insisted. I could tell he was being stubborn, either not wanting to do housework or just wanting to have his sister around. Tired of arguing, I finally said, "Fine, do what you want, but make sure she doesn't stay over." Even though I stressed this point, I didn't trust him. Sure enough, when I came home a week later, Sarah was there again, lounging on the sofa as if it were her own house. The house was a mess and nothing had been done. "What's going on? Why is she still here?" I asked. Tom just shrugged and said, "There was more housework than I expected." Tom said, "I asked Sarah to stay over yesterday and today because it was too much for her." I thought to myself, I knew this would happen. "What do you mean? You promised it would only be one day," I said, frustrated. "Don't get so upset," he replied. "She's your sister-in-law, and you're the one who leaves for business trips. You should be grateful she's helping out." "What? Do you even understand what a business trip means? I'm not out having fun," I snapped. But Tom kept going. "Oh, and by the way, Sarah is divorced now and lost her job. There will be times when you can't do housework because of your trips, right? She's okay with helping out, so I thought we could let her live with us." I was shocked. "What? Why are you making decisions without asking me? This isn't just your house." "Come on, we should help each other out when things get tough. Don't you feel bad for her?" he said. I was furious. "How could you break your promise and decide something like this on your own? I can't trust you anymore. How could you say something so cruel to your husband? It's only for a little while. Sarah says she'll find her own place and a job soon. Plus, we have an extra room, and she doesn't want to stay in the house she shared with her ex-husband." I couldn't believe it. Sarah was divorced, jobless, and now she wanted to live with us. I was at my breaking point. "How dare you make such decisions without consulting me? This is the last straw. You're so inconsiderate. What do you think of this family?" Tom brushed it off. "If you're going to be like this, do whatever you want." I grabbed my suitcase, fresh from my business trip, and stormed out of the house. Leaving was easy, but I had no place to go, so I ended up at an internet cafe. After a short break, I started to calm down. Just then, Tom called. "Come on, Jazz. You don't need to get this worked up. My sister is in trouble. I can't just ignore her." "Now that you've cooled down, think about it. She's offering to help with housework. It's not a bad deal, right?" I replied, "Do you remember the promises we made? I can't stand your sister, and I don't trust her." "What are you saying?" he snapped. "If you're so against living with her, why don't you leave?" "Is that really okay with you?" I asked, hurt. "Fine, I don't mind at all. But don't come crying to me if you regret it." And with that, Tom angrily hung up the phone. After Tom hung up, I could feel my love for him fading fast. I thought, that's it, I've had enough of him. He had caused me so much pain, and now he was practically kicking me out of my own home. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I decided to make sure he'd regret everything. I came up with a plan and started getting everything ready. Not long after, Tom called me, clearly panicking. Just listen. This morning, out of nowhere, John showed up at the house, he said, sounding all over the place. Perfect, I thought. My brother John, who's great at housework, had been invited by me to help out. I'd also talked to Tom's parents and had Sarah, his sister, sent back to their place. Now it was just John and Tom at the house. Tom was flustered and asked, "Why did you call him without asking me first?" "Well, I thought you'd need help without me there. John's great at housework, and I figured it would make things easier for you," I said. "It's hard for me when someone comes over and starts doing things in my own house." Tom complained. I replied, "Why? That's exactly what Sarah was doing when you invited her to stay without telling me. At least I could have told you beforehand. But you didn't tell me about Sarah, did you?" Tom went silent, looking guilty. He finally realized how selfish he'd been. But this was just the beginning of my plan. "That's the situation," I said. "If you have any questions, ask John about the housework." Bye. I hung up before Tom could respond, ignoring his persistent calls after that. The next day, I moved on to the next step of my plan. As expected, Tom called again, sounding desperate. "Jessica, I need your help," he said, his voice shaking. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" I asked, pretending to be innocent. "Everything's wrong. Your brother is using my stuff, my suits, my bags, even the new accessories I bought. I haven't even used them yet." I calmly replied, "Well, you said it was fine for your sister to do the same with my things, remember? When I complained, you told me not to be stingy. So what's the problem?" Tom had no response. I added, "By the way, I'd already talked to your parents about this. I'm sure Sarah is hearing from them right now." "How could you involve my parents in this?" Tom shouted, clearly upset. "Well, you wouldn't listen to me, so I had to get them involved," I said calmly. Tom was stunned, never expecting I would go that far. His parents even agreed not to contact him for a while, giving him a taste of his own medicine. Later, I returned home with my in-laws and Sarah. As soon as we got inside, Tom started complaining, "You're finally back. It's been so hard because of you." Ignoring him, I gathered everyone in the living room and played a video I had secretly recorded. The hidden camera footage showed Sarah going through my things and taking them without permission. Both Tom and Sarah were speechless. Tom stammered, "What is this? Why did you do this?" I replied, "Sorry, but I didn't trust you to, so I recorded this before my business trip." Tom's father was furious. "What have you done? This is a crime," he shouted at Sarah. Even Tom's mother was outraged, her face red with anger and on the verge of tears. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. And with that, my revenge was complete. I handed the divorce papers to my husband right then and there. "Wait, are you serious? You want a divorce over this? Is this some kind of joke?" he asked, shocked. "Do you think this is a joke?" I shot back. "Do you understand how much pain this so-called little thing has caused me? Every time I tried to talk, you ignored me and always put Sarah first. And she never returned the things she took without asking. I never gave her permission. It's basically theft. I could even sue her. Now sign the papers." My husband was trembling as my in-laws stood by silently watching. After a while, he realized he had no choice and signed, accepting the situation. As soon as I had the signed papers, I started packing my things. Seeing this, he tried to stop me. "Jessica, if you leave, I won't be able to afford the rent on this place," Tom pleaded. The apartment we were living in was in a great location, but it was expensive, and there was no way he could pay for it on his own. His parents looked at him with pity, but I didn't feel any sympathy anymore. "I don't care," I said firmly. "You're a stranger to me now. Figure it out yourself. You've got your precious sister. Why don't you two find a place within your means?" With that, I left the house and immediately submitted the divorce papers. I moved into an apartment closer to my work. My ex-husband bombarded me with calls and emails, but they were just a bother, so I blocked him. Now I have no idea what he's doing or where he is, and honestly, I don't care. Free from all the stress, I'm finally enjoying my single life.